Hi, I'm Anita Sanchez. Welcome to the town of Ballston's Geology Rocks. Today we're going to take a look at geology, which is the study of rocks. Rocks are all around us. We see them every day. Often they make the very buildings that we live in or go to school in. But we don't really think about rocks very much. So let's look around us and see what things are made out of stone and what things aren't. The highway, for instance, is sort of made out of stone. The road that cars drive on is made of asphalt, which is a combination of a tarry, sticky substance that comes from oil and crushed up sand and rock. How about bricks? What are bricks made out of? Bricks aren't rocks. Bricks are made out of clay, which is a type of soil. The bricks are formed into rectangular shapes and then heated up in a kiln to make them harder, like you heat up a clay pot to make it hard. What about sidewalks? What are they made out of? They're as hard as rock, but they're not exactly the same thing as rock. Sidewalks and curbs are usually made of something called concrete, which has rocks in it. It has ground up bits of rocks and sand and gravel, and it's all held together with cement. And cement is made by grinding up different types of rocks and adding chemicals to them to make it all sticky so the rocks will stick together. You can see that concrete has a lot of rock in it. I think one of the reasons I've always liked rocks and collecting them and learning about them is their beautiful colors. Rocks come in so many different, amazing colors, all the colors of the rainbow. I love the golden color of this rock. It's a mineral called citrine, kind of like a citrus fruit. It's bright orange. Here's the purple crystals of an amethyst. Here's a rock with orange and yellow stripes in it. If a rock has a lot of red color in it, that probably means it has some iron in it. Iron is an element that, when it combines with oxygen, it turns red. That's why nails get rusty and turn red. So these rocks have some iron in them. Here's some things that are not rocks, even though they're very hard. These are pieces of coral. Now, coral is a living animal. There used to be small animals, kind of like little tiny shrimp, living inside those openings. They lived under the sea, and from the seawater, they took a mineral called calcium, and they used this calcium to build these skeletons that provided a framework for them to live. And millions of these tiny coral animals all working together make huge coral reefs. Now, calcium is a mineral that also makes up seashells. Seashells are the skeletons of living animals. There was once a snail that lived inside there. There was once a creature that lived inside this scallop shell, and it took calcium from the seawater and made these hard shells. But they're not the same as rocks. And of course, bones, animal bones or human bones, are also made out of calcium. That's why sometimes people take calcium vitamins or drink milk, which has calcium in it, because calcium builds strong bones or seashells or coral. And some rocks are made mostly out of calcium. This is a type of rock called limestone, and it comes from seashells millions and millions of years ago on an ancient ocean that slowly broke into small bits and were cemented together over the pressure of time to make limestone. There are three basic types of rocks. There's igneous rocks, which come from volcanoes, from molten layers of rock underneath the ground. There's sedimentary rock, which is when bits of sand or shells or pebbles over the course of millions and millions of years get cemented into hard, solid layers. And then there's metamorphic rock. When something happens to either igneous or sedimentary rock, extreme heat or heavy pressure, that changes it into a whole different kind of rock. This plain old rock might not look too exciting. It's just a chunk of grayish rock, but it's got a really explosive history. Mount St. Helens was a beautiful mountain in Washington State in the western part of the United States. But in 1980, there was a huge volcanic eruption. Mount St. Helens was an active volcano, and it blew up in an eruption that was one of the biggest in human history. It spread ash and bits of rocks for hundreds and hundreds of miles. So when the volcano erupted, this chunk of rock, called basalt, was hurled into the air and flung through the air for miles and landed about 5 miles away from the volcano. This is a piece of sedimentary rock called slate. You can see the layers, long ago, layers of mud laid down one on top of the other, and then it was pressed together by the weight of the earth above it over millions of years to form this rock. But you can still see the layers, and the layers can be split apart pretty easily. So long ago, they used to use these layers of slate to make slates that you could write on. And kids would go to school and write on their slates. And they were also called blackboards. And they would have big ones on the walls for the teacher to write on. So that's why we still sometimes call them blackboards today, even though nowadays they're mostly white because we write on them with colored markers. But in the old days, when you went to school, you wouldn't bring pencil and paper, you'd bring your slate. Sometimes when a sedimentary rock is in the water, in the river, or on a beach, the water will erode it away, smooth it, and leave the beautiful pattern of stripes. You can still see those layers. Sometimes you might see rocks, especially old rock walls, that are splotched with what looks like paint. Looks like someone just dripped paint all over them. But this is actually a weird thing called lichen. It's not exactly a plant. It's partly made up of algae, and it's partly made up of fungus. And it grows on the rock, just sort of using the rock as a place to sit, and it absorbs water from the air, and the algae part of the lichen makes food for it, doing photosynthesis. So lichen is a living thing that's found on rocks. It doesn't hurt the rock, doesn't damage it. And I always like to see lichens on these old stone walls because lichens are very sensitive to air pollution. They don't grow where there's a lot of polluted air. So if you see lichens on rocks, that's a good sign that the air is pretty clean where you are. Believe it or not, an interesting place to study geology is the cemetery. Tombstones are made out of different kinds of rock, and you can see how some of the rocks are very hard and they don't erode much. The carving lasts a long time. This tombstone is made out of granite. Other tombstones are made out of softer rock, like limestone, which wears away or erodes, especially in the rain. And so the writing can be hard to read. Here's a tombstone that's made out of marble. Marble is a metamorphic rock. It forms when limestone is exposed to heat and pressure. So limestone becomes marble. Here's a monument that's made out of a rock that's a beautiful shade of pink. This is also granite, and the pink is caused by a mineral called feldspar. Granite is an igneous rock. It's formed when magma or molten rock cools very slowly. You can see it's got kind of a salt and pepper sort of color to it. Those are the different minerals it's made of. Quartz and mica. Sometimes it has feldspar. An interesting place to see the rocks under the Earth's surface is when you drive along the highway and you pass a road cut. This is where they cut down into the earth when they built the highway. In fact, if you look closely, you can see the drill holes where they drill down into the rock to make the highway. And you can see the flat layers of the sedimentary rock piled up on top of each other. In those layers of sediment that get compressed together, sometimes there are creatures from millions of years ago that were trapped in those layers of sediment. They died, and they form fossils. When you go looking for fossils, of course, always be sure you're a safe distance from the road. But look closely at the rocks. You never know what you might find. Look at the shells in the rock here. You can plainly see their shapes. Here's a fossil of an ancient seashell, millions of years old. Whenever I want to learn more about something, I like to go to the library and take out some books about it. There's so many different kinds of fossils, it can be really hard to identify exactly what you've got. But one of the cool things about studying geology and looking at rocks is thinking about the Earth and what it looked like millions of years ago, when all these strange creatures were on it. Imagine what that ancient seashore must have looked like long ago, millions of years ago, with all those shells and other strange creatures scattered across the flat beach. If you decide you want to start your own rock collection, you can buy them, of course. You can go to a rock and gem shop and buy beautiful specimens online. But I actually like to collect the ones that I find. I really prefer the ones that I pick up on the beach or along the side of the road. The sort of lumpy, bumpy ones that have interesting shapes and colors that are a mystery, and I can try to find out what they are. And my favorite kind of rock to collect is green rocks. I think green rocks are good luck. I just like green rocks, so I always try to look for rocks that are green. I just love rocks, and I hope you enjoy them too. So thanks for listening, and don't forget to go out there and look around, start your own collection, and remember that geology rocks.